Midwest Whitetail is brought to you by Realtree, Hoyt Archery, Muddy Outdoors, Fuse Accessories, Trophy Rock, Frigid Forage, Scott Archery, Cabela's, Rocket Broadheads, Woods Zero-Turn Mowers, Bloodsport Arrows, Redneck Hunting Blinds, Scentmaster, Yeti Coolers, ScentLock, and Nikon.
Thanks for joining me today on Midwest Whitetail. On today's episode, we're revisiting the Poor Man plot. I'm going to get this thing finished up today. We also have the Midwest Whitetail annual meeting and film school this week, so we're going to bring you some highlights from that. And finally, we've got the project on the cornfield. There's a 1 acre corn patch over in the area where I want to hunt Big Junior this fall. I want to make sure that that spot stays prime all the way through the summer, and there's a lot of food available there to bring that buck in come October, November. So we're going to put some hot zone electric fence around that food plot to make sure the deer leave that alone. And if you haven't noticed, I'm having to yell today to overcome the noise of all these cicadas. I think it's every 7 years these things hit like this. It's some kind of a cycle, but they are absolutely screaming out here today. So we'll be putting up with that for most of the summer with these interviews. If I remember right, the last time they were here, it was clear into maybe the tail end of August or first part of September before they finally cleared out. So we got a little bit of noise in the background to work with here for a while, but it's not going to stop us from getting to work and getting this food plot in shape. Here's the tools of the trade for today. I've got my rake, and this is just a rake that you use for raking long jump pits. So you can buy them from athletic supply stores primarily. Amazon.com has got them. This is a 3-footer, and they make them up to 4 foot in width on the rake portion. I've got my bag of wild game buffet, Frigid Forage wild game buffet. That's what I'm going to plant in this plot today. This will do a 1/2 acre, and the plot is about 1/4 acre. So we're going to overseed it a little bit. We're not going to overseed it, 100% over, but we'll probably do about a 50% overseed rate, just because we know we're going to have a little bit of trouble getting seed to soil contact with all the residue that's still going to be left when we're done. I mean, it's one thing if you can till it and then broadcast. It's another thing when you've got to go almost no till, because you just aren't going to get as good a germination that way as you would if you're actually tilling it or drilling it into the ground. I've got a set of long-handled pruners for nipping off some of the trees that still remain out there. The Roundup didn't kill all the little trees, so we'll have to nip those off. I've got my little torch and a cigarette lighter. This is what we're going to use to burn off all the residue from the stuff that we sprayed a couple weeks ago. It's all dead and brown now. Today's a nice warm dry day, so it should be dry enough to burn that stuff off. I've got my hand spreader here, and that's going to work for spreading the seed. And if I needed to spread fertilizer, which in this case I'm not going to spread any fertilizer, but I would also use the hand spreader for that too. So time to get started here. I'm going to nip off a few of these little trees, and I'm going to get the fire started and let some of this stuff burn. We got that fire started and it's burning about perfectly. We don't have any wind, hardly at all today. So we started it right in the middle, and the fire has just burned its way outward to the edge. And it tries to go a little bit back underneath the green stuff, but it doesn't take too much to put it out because there's not much fuel under there. So pretty much it stayed contained right in this little plot and hasn't caused too much stress for us. But that's the one thing, of course, you risk with fire is that it gets out of control. But when you burn this time of the year, there's just not a lot of dry fuel out there, so it's not going to go too far if it does escape the the perimeter of your food plot. I'm gonna rake some more here. As you can see, it really does rake up nice. I mean, with all the residue gone off the ground, I'm sure I could get by without raking, and that clover seed on the next rain would find its way into the dirt. But it does help the seed to soil contact just a little bit to rough it up and give it a little bit of texture so that seed's got a little bit easier place to fall into. So I'm gonna catch that little spot burning back in the woods right here, keep raking, and we'll be putting the seed out here in about, half an hour, I'll bet. That, my friends, is how you make a poor man's plot. This is the third one we've done on this farm, and this one's turned out the best for sure of all three of them. The location is good, the soil worked up really well, the fire burned it all off nice and clean, and if you want to go back a couple of episodes, you can see what it looked like before we started here. I'll show you in some of the early episodes when Midwest Whitetail fires back up again in August what this thing looks like during this summer. We'll film it and we'll document it, and hopefully we don't get a drought like we've had the last 2 years. You know, being up on a little ridge top like this, it'll drought out pretty easy if we don't get the rains. Seed is down. We're supposed to get some rains tonight. In fact, they're calling for locally heavy rains, so we should have no trouble soaking this in, getting all the seed kind of worked down into the soil. Everything looks perfect. I'll be looking forward to seeing what this thing looks like in a couple of weeks. I'm sure I'll have a bunch of little clover popping up in here. Next, we're going to go to the segment on putting up the hot zone fence around my corn food plot.
It's June 5th here in southern Iowa. Jared and Zach and I came out today to put up the deer exclosure system from Non-Typical Wildlife Solutions. And where we're standing at is a spot that you're all very familiar with. Over my right shoulder is a redneck blind that Bill shot loppy out of in 2012 and an old gnarly buck there last year. In the past, this food plot has always been big and beasty or soybeans, and Bill decided to plant it to corn this year. And as you can see, it's looking great. There's lots of other food plots located throughout the farm, but this is the one that we want to try and make the very best possible when it comes to this fall and late season. This is a spot where he hopes to kill Big Junior this fall. We've already got our stakes in for our first outer row of this fence. We're going to get the second one put in, get our rope strung, get the fencer hooked up, and it should be good to go. This should be a great looking corn plot this fall. The boys and I got a lot of work to do, so we're going to get after it here, but this should be a great spot for Bill to hunt over this coming fall. Well, it's just about dark here. It took Jared, Zach, and I a couple of hours to get this thing put up. It sure helps when you got a couple of extra hands. It just goes that much quicker and pretty smooth. This corn food plot sure looks great. Here in a couple of months, we ought to be able to see a definite difference between this corn right in front of me and what's on the other side of these two fences. So if you got some of these smaller food plots on your property, I sure wouldn't hesitate to go out and get you an exclosure system. You'll definitely see some results.
I would say you can bring your groups to the middle. It's easier for me to communicate. Do a better job here, get the message across.
We hunted the Saturday the 22nd in what I thought was probably my best stand. It's a spot that the guys had filmed quite a number of.
Obviously, with Midwest Whitetail, we're here to teach, and we're not really here to entertain as much, so we need as much strategy as possible in the interviews. And
thinking about food a lot earlier in the day than you would have before.
And like Phil said, this is your guys' story that we're putting together on the West and the world to watch. So we want to make it the best we can, and to do that, there are certain types of footage that we need. So this is going to kind of be.
Every time I get up in the morning during the hunting season, I'm always thinking to myself, in the back of my mind, I need to try to find a way to get up that buck. What's my strategy for today?
We waited until like 7 o'clock right before the sun went down. And we shot all this stuff right before sunset. And that's all intentional because we needed our best light early morning and late night.
You'll get the most pictures out of it and see the most activity June through September, about the middle of September when antlers are developing. A little something there, but it smells like it's a long ways away. You're 20 yards away,
that deer steps out in daylight when otherwise he wouldn't. You have
Did make a slight modification on this year. We redesigned the door gasket here. So basically, when you close it, you see
So you watch the footage. You know, because I've heard that somebody, I don't need one. Most people do, but I don't need one. Let me tell you why, and you watch what they're doing. So, cool thing. You still cut a little micro mount.
The hot zone is a dual perimeter fence. It's a dual electric fence. You have two wires on the inside, one at 10 inches, one at 24 inches.
Where they run it over with a truck. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. They run this over with a truck. Put an arrow in it, shoot.
I hope you enjoyed the sights and sounds behind the scenes at the Midwest Whitetail annual meeting. It's always a lot of fun to get the pro staff together and talk about what we do and how we can do it better. But before I close out today, I want to touch on the fencing project that we did and kind of give my perspective on that real quick about why I think it's so important to protect these little honey holes within your hunting area. It'd be really impractical to try to fence all the food plots. So that's not what we're trying to do here. We're really just trying to pick those spots where we know we've got a certain deer that we're going to be likely hunting that year. Make sure that we've got some kind of a food plot there for that deer to attract him and hold him in that area. In this case, of course, we've already talked about it. It's Big Junior, and we're really looking forward to trying to peg this buck for this fall. He's going to be our #1 project. You know, fencing corn is a little bit different than fencing beans. We did beans last year. Corn is a little bit different type of a project because it's so expensive to grow it. And around here, the deer seem to like to eat that ear when it's just starting to, when it silks and just starts to form the ear, the deer come through and they eat the ears out. So you got a really nice looking stand of corn with no ears on it in the fall. And obviously that's no good. You can't buy crop insurance for food plots. So the next best thing is to buy something like this hot zone fence, which is basically crop insurance for your food plot. One more thing I want to mention about the fencing project is the fact that we're not trying to move the pressure of the deer onto the neighboring farmers. I always feel like we have a certain responsibility as deer hunters that we have to be able to manage the herd within the areas that we're working with. You know, we don't want to displace those deer onto our neighbors. So we're not in any way on our farm ever going to fence so much of the property that the deer are eating the ag crops instead of the food plots, because that's a kind of an irresponsible approach. So I just want to throw that out as a quick disclaimer. That's not our goal. Our goal is to have little pockets here and there where we've got 100% guarantee that we're going to have a food plot in the fall. Well, that's it for this week. I appreciate you joining me here. We'll see you right back here again next week for the next episode of Midwest Whitetail. And remember to always dream big.